And another instance happened with art as well, where I got a scholarship to be able to go to a program. And it
Mhm.
was like, no. So this stigma around art not really being a success or career,
Mhm.
making money, really influenced a generation of parents that I think, for me, my understanding of it now, promoted this sense of fear over faith.
Mhm.
Um, After that, I continued. I started to create art. Then I called my mom and I was like, I'm moving back home. I want to be an artist.
Mhm.
And, the phone was silent. And I was like, I'll see you when I get there.
Wow.
Love you.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Hope Health Community podcast. We're so happy that you're joining us again or for the first time. I'm Rochelle.
And I am Rashida.
Yep. And we are here. We're just talking about community again today and how we're building it, especially in times of uncertainty, and how we foster support, love, and community with each other. And we have a wonderful guest today. We cannot wait to get started with her, Miss April Fitzpatrick. And so we're going to bring her in and get started.
Very exciting things coming, guys, from this one. Hi,
Hello.
April.
Hi,
Hi,
how are you?
April.
Welcome in. Welcome in. So, we really would love to hear from you who you are, what you do, and just all things April Fitzpatrick.
Thank you for creating this space and holding this space. And this is a moment of joy for me at this particular time. So I'm April Fitzpatrick, and I'm an artist, visual artist, interdisciplinary artist. I'm a board certified art therapist, licensed mental health counselor, and researcher in the field of arts and medicine. And yeah, I would say, other than being a daughter and a sister and an aunt and a native of Jackson, sister, a friend, um, just kind of like a lover of life, a
Mhm.
creative being, imaginative person,
Mhm.
um, that tries to make every moment count and sees the creativeness in every element of
Mhm.
life. Yeah.
Love that. Love that.
Wow. You know, as we were talking before you came in, Rashida and I were talking about like what do we do to find where we find beauty? Like we both have artistic elements of ourselves that we sometimes put to the side as scientists, but
Mhm.
it's hard to just put it over somewhere, right? But we find ways to put beauty in our lives, whether it's through the work that Rashida does on Etsy. I'll put a plug in, and she
Thank
makes these beautiful magnets and so many things in her office. She's handmade, right? And myself, as someone who loves music and dance and poetry, and just always looking for outlets for of art, and art sometimes keeps me grounded
you.
when I feel like I can't see my way out of the mess, a lot of times the external mess. And so what got you, how did you realize that you were a creative and that art was
Mhm.
your communication and your way of resisting um, things that maybe were kind of you couldn't control, or just resisting things that you felt were harmful to you and your community?
Right. I would say as a youth, I was always pretty creative, having the opportunity to be in gifted classes and being exposed to teachers that really uplifted and watered that side of me.
Yeah.
Um, I remember finding a picture of myself at an art exhibition in middle school, because when you start doing art as a practice, you just think it starts in that moment.
Mhm.
And that picture reminded me that um, this has been a part of me. I've always been attracted to that. I always asked my mom to, buy craft things and things of that nature. But it wasn't until 2010 when I took a study abroad trip to Accra and
Mhm.
spent 2 months in Africa,
Mhm.
that it really affirmed and solidified that
Mhm.
that's what I was supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
Time prior to that, academia, traditional academia, had just kind of taken over,
Mhm.
my life. You become good at it,
Right.
it's reinforced through rewards and all types of things. And I had taken a few art classes in undergrad, but it was still very like aimlessly, not really intentionally. But I got introduced to Adinkra symbols in during my time in Accra, and I was just fascinated by how one symbol could have such a in-depth narrative.
Mm.
I was always kind of jokingly named as being like long-winded, and so for a symbol to just have so many stories and there's so many symbols for me was a way to start to tell my story in snippets until I became comfortable or concise enough. Um, when I returned home, however, in 2010, I still didn't begin to create
Right.
because I returned back into the world of academia. I was a sophomore in college. And when my grandmother died, uh, 1 year post me graduating unexpectedly, I was kind of catapulted into that in a very forced way. And
Mm,
from there, I didn't look back, and it's been a journey ever since.
wonderful. I think you touched on it. For me, I've always thought about like what would I've done if I weren't in academia or what, and I always in my mind say I probably would be doing something in the arts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I come from a small rural area that only had one option for high school, and I
Um,
wondered if I was in an area that had access to like performing arts school or something,
mhm.
other options that really championed your desire to be an artist. So, to your point about kind of that traditional path that we're oftentimes conditioned to feel like we have to pursue in order to make a decent living or to
Yeah.
be independent. How much did you feel like you had to struggle, or was that a push and pull? It sounded like in some instances, and how who would you say influenced that aspect, and who might have been more supportive in your close circle of family, friends, etc., to help you, to encourage you to pursue the arts.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm glad you bring that up, and because I think we shy away from transparency around this because sometimes when you talk about your push and pull, which is directly related to your own purpose,
Yeah.
somebody ends up having to be the villain in that story, and we can reframe it and not necessarily call it the villain, because it doesn't have to be so dichotomized, but
Yeah.
it is a mastering of self that happens, and you have to tune people out. And so instances early on for me that I can reflect back on before even painting and arts in that field, dance was my first love. And
Yep.
I remember getting accepted to a dance camp at Delta State University, and
Mm.
I had like got a role, and it was just like really well. And my mom was like, "No, you gonna go to school, academic." Um, and another instance happened with art as well, where I got a scholarship to be able to go to a program, and it
Mhm.
was like no. So this stigma around art not really being a success or career,
Mhm.
making money, really influenced a generation of parents that I think for me, my understanding of it now, promoted this sense of fear over faith.
Mm.
Um, and kind of stuck us to this one way of doing life or being.
Yeah.
And so after that, I continued. I started to create art. Then I called my mom and I was like, I'm moving back home. I want to be an artist.
Mhm.
And, the phone was silent. And I was like, I'll see you when I get there.
I
Wow.
love you.
At the time, I was staying in Memphis, and my
Mhm.
best friend, who is a chef, another artistry,
Mhm.
um, had been talking to me about her dreams of becoming
Mhm.
a chef. And she was like, April, you have to watch this movie, The Secret,
Okay.
on Netflix, and you have to watch John Basquiat documentary. I think about you. And I watched that, and that really gave me that first gut turn of events to say, okay, lock in.
Mm.
Mhm.
So I came back home, and for that full year, I was kind of like on the road, vending, participating. I was selling work.
Okay.
Um, but my mom was so fixed
Mm-hmm.
on who she wanted me to be in reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, and she just really had a hard time, even though I was being productive and in my mind successful. She had a really hard time having radical acceptance around like this is what she is choosing to do. Now in
Mhm.
my mind, I'm doing the background planning, right? So the art for me is just what feels most authentic, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
still going to activate my degree in psychology, mental health. I was talking about mental health. I was talking about having art in hard places to give youth opportunity to have their voice. But she couldn't see the bigger vision, and I think it is important for us to name that, because when God gives you that vision, when He really gives it to you, sometimes really no one else can see
Else
it,
we
even
can
those
see.
closest to you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Amen.
the push and pull in that dynamic, because I was back at home, eventually led me to go back to get my art therapy degree of grad school. And it became a conversation between me and God, like, okay, you just have to work this out, because I keep having to pause and go back and do something else, even though I feel like I found what I need to do. And I
Mm-hmm.
was still creating art in grad school, but as you know, when you're in grad school academia, you have little time for
Yeah,
any of
consume.
that.
Mm-hmm.
However, while I was in grad school, I did meet quite a few people along the way. Um, I remember one of my pieces first got accepted into my first exhibition jury group show.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for that, during that time, that was kind of God's way of giving me snippets. And I had to challenge myself to not become so fixated on the way and the path that I thought I was needing to take in that. And that's how I was able to merge my profession of art therapy with my role as an artist and not see them as separate and really intertwine them
Mm-hmm.
in that regard. And so I think post graduation, it has continued to be a push and pull. I think it'll always be a push and pull.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've definitely been blessed and been privileged with opportunities to water both sides of those
Mm-hmm.
and be with them in the middle.
Great. Awesome. Thank you.
Right. I mean, so I'm gonna be real silly real quick, but I just love your tone and your voice. And so, as somebody who's grown up singing,
Therapist tone.
it's so calming. My ear is very very sharp and is trained to be very sharp. Like, so to hear melodies and to hear harmonies, and even the way you speak is very melodic and artistic. And I'm not feeling comfortable because I'm tired. Even though I'm tired, I'm not bored. I'm feeling like you're giving me a soothing vibe. I'm like, my goodness, her voice is so soothing.
I'm really about.
Okay, I wanna play back into that for just a second.
Yes.
One, I would say my voice is probably, and we just keeping it real, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably in the top 3 insecure things about myself.
No.
Why? Because as a little girl in the choir, they tried to make me a tenor.
Okay, I can
And
hear the
I did
register.
not want to be a tenor. I wanted to be a first alto. And they was like, no, that's not, I can't sing anyway, but in the church, everybody used to be in the choir.
The
Right.
person who did that is, there's an association between our speaking voice and our singing voice, but it's not always a perfect association. And
Yeah.
I've heard, like first sopranos and mezzo sopranos whose voices are very low. They're speaking voices.
True.
And
Yeah,
then you
true.
hear them hit these notes and it surprises and shocks you, right?
Right.
That association sometimes can lead people to make wrong assumptions. But whatever, you should not. Well, I hope you don't.
My
feel
voice is also
insecure.
heavy.
Oh my
And it's
God!
very
That heaviness feels like
monotone.
a pillow. It feels like a pillow to me. So,
That's so interesting. I've gotten a lot of backlash about my
oh
voice. It's like
no!
monotone, kind of flat, so nobody can really read
Hmm.
what I'm feeling in the. It's often, it's a lot of anti-blackness and stereotypes
Well, yes,
around
Right.
it as
Right.
well.
yes.
But
But I
but
think
my
that level of neutrality is great for where you are, what you do as a
Yeah,
therapist. I mean, you don't
Yes.
want
true.
your voice to give
Me too.
any, yeah, any
Yeah,
indication that
Feeling.
you're judging whether however somebody might interpret that. So I mean, the
absolutely.
being monotone and having that consistency is an advantage, I think, for what you do. But
Well
That's so
said. Well
funny.
said, Doc. Well said, Dr. Rashida. All I know is that it made me feel comfort. You
I,
know, so I think
yeah,
about what you were sharing is the tensions and the parental desires to manage the future of their children. And you think about how much Black parents have their anxieties about their children's futures because of structural racism and injustice. So
mm-hmm.
we're always like parenting with these extra things around us. Not
right,
that other parents don't have their own anxieties about their kids' futures, but ours is influenced by these other very serious systems that can harm us. And so, out of love and protection, a lot of times our parents will try to find what they feel is the safest career.
Right.
right.
And we had this conversation with Dr. Aza
Mm-hmm.
several episodes ago, and what you were speaking about kind of reminded me of what
It
he
did.
spoke about,
Yeah.
and how he was a choir director and then had to fuse his musicality with being a neuroscientist. And
Yeah.
so it's very similar of what you and the beauty of how music and art has such a profound impact on our mental health.
Right.
It's one of my favorite things to talk about now because of we're just seeing how much impact that has. And interestingly, the I'm seeing in the literature that Black art therapists and Black neuroscientists who understand art, the importance of music and art, are doing remarkable things for young
Yes.
people across the country.
Yes.
So thank God you listened to the spirit who told you to go after this because it is so needed.
Right.
And how did your mother come to accept your calling?
I think it was a mixture of me doubling down,
Mm-hmm.
like this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have a show coming up. You're invited if you would like to come.
Yes,
Oh,
You
ma'am.
know, I think she started to see publications. She
Mm,
started to see people buy my work.
right.
Um, and then 2020 came and the outside literature, because my work deals with racism at its core. So weathering allostatic load, racial based injury, um,
Mm-hmm.
high cortisol, stress hormones, how all of that
Yeah.
impacts the Black experience
Yeah.
in America.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of that literature and conversations was happening in 2020, and mental health was on the rise. And then you saw the APA apologizing, and you saw NAMI being more vocal. And so I think it took for her to see larger organizations validated in
Mm-hmm.
a way to say, oh,
Mm.
like she called me when she's like, the mental health is real. And I'm like, yes, it's real. It's been real. But sometimes we need those breaks, right?
Yeah.
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 To offer
Somebody
up.
else needed to say it.
And
Not
she just
Right.
want to make sure her baby ain't gonna starve. Let's just
right.
be honest.
I
She's trying to
know.
make sure you gonna eat and can pay your bills.
But
Absolutely.
the funny part about that is that it's written that there will be rough times. Like you're gonna have to go through that rough patch. And then
Mm-hmm.
I took her to a conference recently in Montgomery, Alabama, for the Partners in Health Equity advancing. Yeah. Of course,
That's
right.
how we met.
Yeah.
And I invited her to write a scholarship. I'm like, you've been working in the field of
Okay.
gynecology and in these hospitals for all my life. Like you've been the behind the scenes with the nurses and the doctors. I'm like, your years of experience matter as far as health equity and what racism has
Right.
done. All these stories that you came home and shared with me, and we
Yeah.
both got awarded the scholarship. And she was able to see the mothers of gynecology
Mm-hmm.
talk about her story, which started with art.
Wow.
She said
Oh.
herself how she dropped out of college
Wow.
and went and chased art. And I said, I'm so glad you were able to hear her story,
Yeah.
because you see now, all the moving pieces,
Mm-hmm.
and what can be done when you realize that all things are working together.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh,
I love it, man. I have jotted down a couple things, but I'm trying to like pace it so I'm not like overwhelming you. But I really wanted to get your thoughts about well, since we're on kind of art therapy, I want to stay in that
Mhm.
same vein, and then I'll go to some of my other questions because they're not quite the same as far as
Mhm.
the topic is concerned. But what are examples of the therapies that you employ in the art therapy space, and how do you determine what is most effective for what client? Like, how do you kind of individualize? I know you take an assessment and all those things, but
Mhm.
is there a
Um,
way for you to decipher what therapy you feel is going to be most effective, or does the client have input in that? I'm just kind of curious how that
yeah,
works.
yeah. So I do have a pretty eclectic approach, and
Okay.
that and under the umbrella of art therapy, I may play around with motivational interviewing, dialectical behavior therapy,
Yeah.
um, anger management, group therapy, narrative therapy, strength based, acceptance and commitment. So I kind of play around with quite a few and
Okay.
put it together. What typically informs that is capacity in regards to sometimes it's solution focused. Sometimes I know, with all that the client has going on, their attention span, basic needs being met, how much support that they have outside of me
Yeah.
lets me know how in depth or not I can get with something.
Mhm.
Of course, the I don't like to say diagnosis, but that's just my decolonial and on things, but the challenges that they're being faced at that moment helps inform me as well. So typically, if individuals are coming with like, anxiety,
Mhm.
depression, relationship issues,
Mhm.
transitioning, I'll typically pair, art therapy with motivational interviewing, strength based acceptance and commitment, like in the beginning.
Okay.
Mhm.
Um, and then I'll move through dialectical behavior if I feel like that their cognition or belief system is really impairing their ability to perform and just be
Yeah.
and move forward. Narrative therapy um, and faith-based therapy, depending on the client, can be very
Mhm.
strong too, because a lot of individuals just haven't even taken time to even understand their narrative and
Mhm.
who they are. And I think trauma informed therapy is at the undercurrent of just everything that I do
Yeah.
as well. So really looking at language, growth mindset, a lot of reframing, which can fall
Mhm.
into cognitive behavior therapy, but I have my own ethical
Yeah.
relationship with cognitive behavior therapy.
Yeah.
And then social, political, culture, and social justice advocacy really is like the outward circle of everything, because what I was experiencing with a lot of Black clients that I was seeing across working in schools, working in hospitals, working in community, working in groups, addiction, substance use, when I
Mhm.
really listened to their story, is systemic racism and discrimination, and like all
Mhm.
that was just through and through. So I'm
Right.
like, we need to really educate so you can really contextualize what your experience has been in
Mhm.
regards to these larger issues, and then give you agency through the art therapy aspect. So art therapy, for in more intense psychiatric spaces that I've worked in, if I'm dealing with individuals that are having manic episodes or
Yeah.
hallucinations, it's very structured. I use collage a lot. I use clay a lot to prevent the opportunity of further inducing
Yeah.
those episodes.
Right.
With sexual assault clients, I've used 3D materials like cardboard.
Hmm.
I used to love this thing called the DBT house to
Mm.
build the levels of different emotions. Muppets, sensory based
Wow.
individuals. I wouldn't use things like watercolor or things that would invoke them to lose control, because that would offer up, they're already experiencing a loss of control.
Control. Right.
Mhm.
So eventually, along the plan that we're working towards, when we build their confidence up enough, the idea is to get them to a place to be able to use a material where they can
Mhm.
lose control, but we don't start off with
We
that.
all start off. Okay.
Same thing with grief, individuals who have lost someone. So I've been fortunate enough to work with, I would say the one thing that I probably haven't had much experience working with was eating disorders.
Okay.
But everything else, I've kind of pulled the material. So in art therapy, we have this thing called the expressive therapist continuum that
Mm-hmm.
you see that guides individuals all the way up to the creative. So you have the kinesthetic sensory, which is the material bringing them down from the cognition, and
Yes.
you move them up to perceptual affective, and then you move them up to cognitive and symbolic. However, at any moment during the session, a client or individual could be operating from either one of those points. And depending on their relationship with the challenge that they're facing, your goal is to move them to something else. So if I get an overly intellectual client
Yeah.
who is using that as their cognitive defense, then
Mm-hmm.
my role is to move them down to kinesthetic sensory to, and the art material helps facilitate that.
That. Okay. That's very, very helpful. And I just one last little addendum to that is do you operate doing telemedicine at all or doing because I know in the mental health space that's kind of big
Right.
to do. So I don't know if it works for you.
Transferable,
Yeah.
right. It truly depends on the client. I always let individuals know that I'm trained in a lot of things, but my best self comes out when I'm able to be the art therapist. That's going to be the best therapist you get of me. And
Gotcha.
so I give them the choice to know, like, if you are opting into this, then be prepared to do it in this way. And I've been fortunate to have individuals who go purchase the materials, we
Yeah.
work on it, we do those things. It hasn't worked always, and that's just something that But I enjoy it better, and I think for me, it's more effective when it's in person.
In person. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. All right, Michelle, because I know you're
Oh my
you're
God.
about to burst with something to add.
Well, I
Let me.
mean, I'm probably like too deep involved to even think about a question, but I think I just want to talk about you as as a person and navigating the space, right? You talked a bit about decolonizing some of the therapeutic approaches, right? And I think Rashid and I both think about how westernized notions around health have created the frameworks in public health that we've been trained to use, but that we come at it with a critical lens, right? We come at it to say, well, that might work for who it was built for, but for our community, we have to create something else. And so I can imagine that in your work, you have your own models, right? And so what does that look like? And have you published anything that is like, this is a Fitzpatrick approach or this is April's approach? What is that like? Because I feel what I'm hearing you say, I'm like, but you're doing so much and none of it is following a traditional approach to even art therapy, right? And
Right.
so how are you building your own model? What kind of support is needed for your model to be out there, to be utilized by up and coming art therapists?
Wow. That question is doing. Are you coming from me?
I'm coming from you. I'm
Did the
coming.
universe send you at this moment in time? So yes, I feel like sometimes this happens to, if not every, many Black students who go into a space of Western knowledge of any kind. And for me, I remember my interview being very like vocal about what I was coming into the space in art therapy to research on. At the time, I was very interested in Hurricane Katrina. I had done my undergraduate research around Hurricane Katrina and post-traumatic stress symptomology, and allostatic load and locus of control. And so I was excited. And then I get in the program and I'm met with like, yeah, no. So for 2 years, I was sick. I was sick for 2 years. My first year was kind of like that tokenized experience of being one or two Blacks in the program. And then that last year was kind of like, we need to, put you in your place. And that was met with a lot of racial violence. And it was out of that program that I developed Pineapples with Purpose. Because I noticed I don't know if it was so much of me trying to hide what I was saying, but it brought me back to the Dinker symbols and using symbolism to tell more larger, in-depth narratives.
Mm.
And so I spent time with the pineapple, one, because it came to me just very playfully
Mm-hmm.
around like spiky truths and sweet solutions,
Mm.
and looking at the spiky truths of racialized histories and the history of the, of the world we're living in is the Black experience, but how we as a culture, as individuals, as regions have found joy to keep like this sweet solution going. And when you really look at the like, I'm a fan of Zora Neale Hurston and anthropology. So when you really look and study at someone's narrative long enough, you find the art, you find the creativity.
Yeah.
And for me, that's where the core of the person is, which the core of the pineapple is where the bromelain enzyme lies, which is the most powerful part of the pineapple.
Mm.
So my biggest thing was a lot of us had become so flowered with these experiences because the pineapple is made up of 200 flowers, but the spikiness had become such a defense to protect, our core. And how can we use art therapy and the arts and community and relationship with one another to kind of let those spikes fall off and instead make room for our crown?
Wow.
So that was my framework that I kind of just started to sail with.
I love pineapples that much more now.
I
That's
know,
my
right?
favorite fruit.
It was my favorite fruit as a child as well.
I love everything pineapple. And
Yeah.
and I remember seeing your I think there was something that you had at the summit. And I was so intrigued by the pineapple, the symbolism of the pineapple, but
Yeah.
I didn't know the depth
The
of
depth of the
oh my goodness.
Yeah,
So
it was just that simple.
wow.
Yeah.
So now you have this organization and the going back to this idea of getting to the center of the pineapple, which is the most important part, right? But getting through to past the flowers and the spikiness. But it's so hard for people to do that, right?
It's very hard for me.
And it almost is like
To myself.
traumatizing people to go that deep sometimes, right? So it
Yeah.
almost feels like a re-traumatizing experience. And so what's your approach to get people to get to the core of who they are and then be open to blooming?
So I think that's why I chose the pineapple, because it's almost kind of like the art in the art therapy session. When whether my client has been very, I guess some people would say easy or challenging, the art is always a place where we contend with one another and kind of can wave the white flag. So while I may say something or do something that brings up something in them, the redirection is focused onto the art, or vice versa, where they may do something to bring something in me as a therapist or as a person. The redirection is focused on the art. So we both leave with the art last thing on our mind. That's how I felt about the pineapple.
Okay.
Though the conversations are acidic, though they're going to be difficult, though many emotions are going to be had or experienced, when a person thinks about a pineapple, you really can't get upset. Even when I tell the history and the colonial history of the pineapple and its relation to slavery and Gullah Geechee communities in South Carolina and just the coastal plains. Even when I give all the information, when you leave, your mind is still just on the pineapple as a fruit itself.
Yeah.
And I think that for me was the sweet balance between being able to sit in some of these truths. When you think about leaving a therapy session and you've dumped all these things out, and my portion was always like, well, what happens? Like, what do they have when they leave the session? Or if you go to a museum and you see this imagery that's very evoking, and then you just go back and get in your car. But when you leave me, you can see the pineapple in a grocery store. You can see it in the store on a T-shirt. You can see it on a commercial.
Farmers market.
So it was larger than me. And I didn't want to have that type of connection to it where you have to wait till you see me again. You can always be engaging with this thing and developing your own kind of narrative and relationship with it on top of the facts that became clear about the pineapple too. So for me, for a spiritual, cultural, and community sense, the pineapple is made with 200 flowers. it can only grow from the crown of another pineapple. So that for me, that interdependence of us needing one another is
Wow.
ruled by fire and sun. It doesn't like to be overwatered. So when I think about the fruit, I'm like, these are Black and indigenous and cultured people. Like when you look at our ways and how we live and traditions and parables that have carried us through are very parallel and similar to, how the pineapple operates. So you have the pineapple as a historical motif.
Mhm.
You have it as education and literacy around being able to talk about, things. You have it as a cultural context, but you also have it as a fruit that you can literally
You
eat
can eat.
and digest and drink, and it
And
is
it
good
will nourish you. It's good for
and
you.
it's nourishing, right?
Wow.
So
I I
that's
will
how I go through
I
it.
will touch on that just briefly, and then we'll shift a little bit to something else that I wanted to get your thoughts on. So, with the pineapple, as you were talking about, the most important part, which is the core. Sometimes the core is thrown out because it's a little bit hard.
It's hard. And
Hard,
that part don't taste as
right?
good.
So a lot of times it's not the part that people tend to
Stay
eat
with,
and
right?
stay with. And so I kind of wanted to see how you process that and
Hmm.
bring description to that part of the essence of the core.
Right. So for me, that's when I think about changing the narrative,
Yeah.
shifting the narrative around something, and uh, the best thing that I've landed on as of right now is pineapple tea. And so I
Mm,
encourage individuals to take both the core and the skin of the pineapple. They'll still throw the skin away too,
mm,
um, but take the skin and the core and cut it up. Add you some ginger, some cinnamon sticks, some lemon,
mm,
and boil it and start your morning off every day with the core of yourself.
mm,
Um, and so for me, again, I'm real big on symbolism, right? Because symbolism also so directly related to public health when we look
Yes.
at how symbols have been used to reinforce messages. So how can we reinforce messages on a very like simple day to day level?
I love
Um, and yeah, that's how I kind of encourage individuals to repurpose that core.
it. I
Not
love it. That
Wow.
was you were so prepared for that.
Yes. Like
That's, it's such a
I've
good
heard
way.
this question before.
Right. And listen, so Rochelle's like this tea connoisseur, like she does all
Yes.
kinds of things. So when I come back to DC, we're gonna have some
We're
pineapple.
gonna have some pineapple
Okay,
tea.
okay.
You can juice the core too. You
So
can juice
I'm
it,
gonna tell you that
juice it
we're
too.
starting this movement of juice in a jar. So we're going to be doing different types of juices and different types of jars, and that's kind of going to be our thing here for Hope Health Communication because everybody talk about tea and the
Right.
wine, so we're kind of doing our juice, and so we're thinking about like how do you juice and what are recipes for that. So I think maybe our first juice can be the pineapple.
Pineapple.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. So Rashida, are you thinking about one of the topics that comes up around like the not it's not self-care packages, but like the I know you wanted to talk about like there's a trending topic. Were you going to ask April on what we should
Oh,
put in it, or were you thinking of something else?
well, I think that could be one aspect of it, but I really wanted to kind of go a little bit different direction here.
Okay.
It's along the lines of trendy.
Okay.
I would say like one of the things I enjoy watching are things that has artistic elements to it. So like culinary shows,
Yes.
design shows. So I wondered in your mind with media kind of you're really putting it out there, competitions in the vein of art. Do you think that now brings more acceptance of it being a viable profession, etc.? Like, I wanted to get your opinion. I know it's a little light
Mm.
as far as conversation, but I wondered
Yeah.
just from it being heightened in the media. I mean, now they have entire channels dedicated to the arts. When you think about
Mm.
culinary channels, the food channel, and
Mhm.
other networks that really do focus on that, and so I was curious what your thoughts are.
So curious if that is if that is helping with the visibility.
is helping with the visibility and almost like, I hate to say, like credibility of it being a profession that is sustainable and can
Oh,
sustain you as if you decide to go that way.
oh, okay, okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. Very, very nuanced, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I see a lot of different perspectives around it. I mean, surely had not the media played a role, even from something as simple as like, Instagram, Netflix, YouTube,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have found out or been able to access the histories and stories of artists that I'm, attractive to, or have deep appreciation to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think then sometimes me and my artist friends talked about, like, there's this fine line between, like, I don't know, just capitalism, right? Just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the need to like be produce.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
sometimes that extra media and
Yeah.
that visibility and that credibility, you have to be really careful on what's driving your production.
Mm.
mm,
But there are some people, some artists who like that's their thing, to
Yeah.
be like commercialized and be
Mm-hmm.
like production. So I think it just depends on the artist's desire and who they are. Like, I really lean to a lot of artists from the Black arts movement and the Harlem Renaissance movement.
mhm,
And when I look at their narratives,
mhm,
um, yes, they were discovered, and yes, media, talked about them, and they're honored as like our pillars of history in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But their experience was just, the art was just so much of like who they were, and just getting to the next day and day to day. I
yeah,
don't think sales was so much as a thing to be, or to be discovered in that way, other outside of just like, this is who I am, and
Yeah.
like
and this
this
is how I survive.
this how the survival, the
Yeah,
community, the connection, how everybody like knew everybody and was
Yeah.
like working together. And I think that's what I'm drawn to,
Okay.
just of
That's
how I feel like art even landed in my life
yeah.
mm,
and was discovered. But do I want to be gallery represented one day? I don't know. It's still a question that I think about. I definitely want to my artwork to tour across, the nation one day. Um, and I definitely want to die, or my legacy to be left like that. I was, an artist.
Yes.
Um,
mm,
but I think media can be tricky, as it can with
With
every
with everything,
with
right?
everything. It's a thin line, because I went through that phase of
Want to be famous. Want
trying to
to get
produce
there.
every day and trying to record every day, and I just had to like, wait, why are
oh
you
my
doing this?
God, you
Yeah.
are
It's
speaking.
a job. It's a
You're
job
you're
to
speaking
be.
my language. I mean, I just feel like art can. I mean, the idea of the starving artist is not hyperbole, right? Like art
Mm-hmm.
was never for a long time. You think of the artists that we know by name right now, right? And
Mm-hmm.
those people were not famous at the time of their art,
Right.
right?
Right.
Think of people like Frida Kahlo, right? That people like wear T-shirts of this person, but what they did when they were here and the impact that they had in terms of revolutionizing, and bringing indigenous Mexican communities
Mm-hmm.
to liberation and exposing their
Right.
that were happening. And you talked about the Harlem Renaissance. I mean, when it was happening, it was not trending, right?
Right.
It was
Yeah.
happening in its own space, protected and celebrated by themselves, not necessarily from an outside point of view. And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if most of the artists that I know, yes, they want to be able to pay their bills, but
Right.
it's not necessarily what drives or motivates them to stay in that space. And I think even for writers and academics, like
Yeah.
research that we do, sometimes it might be read by 1,000 people maximum, max, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
that's a big achievement. But in terms of what it does and the impact that it has, it's beyond it may not be celebrated monetarily right away. And so what I've heard from you today is like your motivation was intrinsic, like it was internal first. Like you had to do art because you had to do it. Like you weren't gonna survive if you did not do what you were called to do. And then God blessed you with opportunities because you were being true to yourself. And I think that's a really critical message of following one's path of authenticity and letting God bless that path. And rather than abandoning yourself in fear of what seems to be most safest. And I say that with humility too, because I know that my parents, my grandparents, you know, immigrants to this country definitely abandoned their art side. Definitely. Right. My father is a structural engineer. He was supposed to be somebody's conductor, choir, right? Like that's his gift. And yet, in order to stabilize the family, he's picking something that will pay bills and, you know, take kids to school and all that kind of stuff. So I understand the sacrifices of people, and even I make my own for my kids. But I wonder what you're talking about feels like it's a greater sacrifice to give up on what one is destined to be, right? Than to maybe sacrifice materially. And that is a harder conversation for us to have. I'm not even sure if I'm ready to tell my kids that, but I think I really, truly appreciate your example. I think it is exemplary.
Yeah.
And, you know, and for me, when you mentioned credibility, Dr. Rashida, and like, has the media helped, you know, to make it more valued and incredible? And no, I still think there's both ands, because again, I have come across some incredible artists through seeing them through media in these ways. But I think anyone who can wake up and choose purpose and passion over fear and perceived scarcity is credible. It's like is the credibility is in that alone. If nobody ever buys it, and I know that's cliche, but or is it cliche? You know, I don't know. It's pretty real, because I think about the story, the parable in the Bible that when God is telling the prophet to leave the fish, to put his rods down, and the guy saying, like, you know, I'm making money this way. The fish are biting.
Right.
Nothing is going wrong. And he's like, are you going to listen to me and leave, even though it's going good?
Right.
You listen to God when it's going, things ain't going
sideways.
Right. But then when the money is coming in, when it's lucrative, and when you get that sense to leave, will you do that? And you know, he left us. I will make you a fisher of many. And so I think what gets me is that when people abandon their gifts, when we carelessly say, like, our gift will make room, do we really believe that? Because our gift is tied to the very things that we're doing in regards to pay the bills and job. Our gift is tied to that in a larger way.
Right.
And we think that if we abandon those things, that those things will no longer be there. But just like the mothers of, you know, gynecology, when she dropped out of school, she was going to study and be in medicine. And now she's the mother of gynecology, but it was made through the art. And so I don't know. I just think I use art to help people bring that confidence, no matter what challenge they're going through. What are you passionate about? What is that purpose? If you're baking a cupcakes, and we art therapy and cupcakes.
I love
it.
You know, if you plant flowers, art therapy and flowers. And I just marry and develop the sessions based on that skill, because that's what's with you every day. You might not go read the article that I tell you to go read.
Right.
But you with this every day. So how can I activate that?
Yes. Okay. So where's the distinction between the hobby and the purpose? Because I think about so many people who love their hobby and like to keep it as a hobby so that they don't have to tie a monetary need to it. And it's like almost protecting it, right? And So, if you're a green thumb, like you probably could do really well as with, but you want to keep your plants as almost in a sacred space that is not attached to a job or a title. So how do you distinguish between those two?
Well, for me, I would say hobby has a relationship. It can be convenient. It's convenience. Like hobby is convenience, and purpose is conviction. Like when you have a purpose, you feel convicted. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to like put my art down and think about it as a hobby, and was convicted. Like the spirit of conviction came upon me immediately.
Wow.
Or and that could be in a positive or a negative way. I've experienced both, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to, and if I could be honest, and I will end this, on my end, but I have been traveling to different spaces, in 2022. I was like, God, I just want to spend like maybe 3 to 5 years doing artist residencies. And he granted me, an artist residency, and I experienced more challenges than I was prepared for in that residency due to some infrastructure issues. But then that propelled me back into like that survivalness, because I guess one thing I didn't think about is that then you have to get your next residency.
Right.
And so that led me to just like, I was just traveling in DC, I was in South Carolina, I was in Hawaii, I was in these different places trying to kind of like buy time.
Yeah.
And finally, God was like, you got to go home. Like the resources are done. And I did not want to go back to Mississippi. I love home, but it was just in my retirement plan. It wasn't in the plan of building my business. And so I came back home, and I was like, well, God, I'm back home. So, you have to make it plain for me if this is where I'm supposed to be, because I'm looking to go abroad. I'm just trying to escape, get away.
Yeah.
And a person came to me about doing art therapy within the museum here. And I was like, well, I can do it, but I don't know. Still resistance. And I felt the conviction, but I ignored the conviction. And, my stubborn self, thank God, God gives me grace. I was like, that's not enough. I was like, I need to make it real plain, because that
Real plain.
I need the arts, and I need to be able to do the arts. I don't want to just be doing, art therapy. And the same people who invited me to do the art therapy gave me this classroom that I'm sitting in to be my art studio space.
Wow.
And so conviction.
Yeah.
And when he did that, I said, I'm so sorry. I apologize.
It's like, okay, God, make it wet here, then make it dry. Then so, but he did it right. He was like, okay, he know what we need as his children.
Yeah. And so had that just been a hobby, I would have just, whatever.
No, let me tell you, like I was done when you said how hobbies are convenience, your purpose is conviction. I mean, listen, you ain't to say nothing. I was sold, because that just came straight inside.
Yeah.
So what a beautiful testimony. I mean, we could take your whole afternoon out. We won't do that. But I mean, just a beautiful testimony. I can't wait to see how you share with us what art is coming out of you, and how you're developing these models, these therapeutic models, these social justice models that I know is in the works. It's happening. And it's profound to see what you're doing. Very, very inspirational. So April, we have this thing where we're meant to talk to parents, or meant to talk to young people, or meant to talk to our community. And the way you think about your pineapple is how we think about hope as a construct, as it's like something that we just cannot give up. It's a discipline, as Miriam Kava says, right? And so what is the hope for your community in Mississippi, for young people, for families, for parents? What is keeping you hopeful in this time?
Well, I hear two different questions. What is keeping me hopeful? What do I hope for?
Yep.
Okay. What do I hope for? Is health and wellness for my community.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
Okay. We all about being authentic,
Yeah.
and emotion is
You
authentic
feel it.
to
When
is
it's,
a
right.
part of it. So please don't apologize.
yeah.
Yeah. Whew, okay. I just lost my grandfather Thursday.
Oh my God,
Mm.
I'm so
Um,
sorry.
he
So
was
sorry.
probably the most hopeful person that I knew.
Mm,
And we talked about hope a lot. And I lost him from diabetes,
mm,
and what that does to the body. Essentially, he had stage 5 kidney disease.
mm,
And when I think about all the stories that he shared for me of tracking his life as a little boy,
yeah.
I just can trace the racial stress and the weathering
Mm-hmm,
and the molecular level
mm-hmm,
of disease of what stress and racism does. And so many people in our community are unfortunately at battle with these diseases in that way.
mm-hmm,
High blood pressure, hypertension, all the things. And I my hope is that my art and my mission with Pineapple with Purpose um, can remove and reduce
yes.
some of those things, so people can be afforded the opportunity to really live healthier and
Mm.
longer lives. My granddad lived a great life. He would have been 85 on February the 4th.
Mm-hmm,
So he lived a long time, but deep down in my heart, and that might be that might be biased and selfish, but deep down in my heart, I just think that public health and preventative care around diabetes and health and wellness would have afforded him a few more years.
mm-hmm.
And I think our elders deserve to get old. They hold so much wisdom,
Yes.
and children, young adults. We need them just as much as they need us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's
Man.
what I'm hoping for. That's
Well,
what
we're going to end on that. I think it was
Mm.
so
Beautiful.
powerful. We really appreciate you guys out there in the audience continuing to support and listen to these powerful, powerful, powerful guests that we continue to bring your way. And just yeah, I think we just ended on that. So we will see you guys next time. We want
Beautiful.
to thank you,
Yes.
April. We hope to bring you back at another time, certainly to feature some of your work. We'll drop your
Exactly.
information in our comments below. But we want to say thank you, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much.
you're welcome.